Hey, everybody, really excited for this talk with a true industry guru and insider. Chetan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Evan. How about yourself?
I'm well. I just booked my travel for Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. I hope you're heading there as well. And I have so many questions. Before that, maybe introduce yourself to the folks viewing.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll be there in Barcelona as well. It's an annual pilgrimage for me as well. Um, I work in the mobile industry. I've been there for about 3 decades, and I run a strategy consulting firm that works with clients worldwide.
Yeah, well, tell us more because you make it sound so simple, but you're an author, a content creator, analyst, consultant. How busy are you at the moment in the mobile industry? I imagine every day is just filled jam packed with new insights, new opportunities. What's top of mind for you and your work at the moment?
Sure. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, there is never a dull moment. In I've been doing this for 30 years. About 23 years ago, I started the consulting firm focused on product strategy and technology road mapping and intellectual property, and so really focus on where the industry is headed and how should companies navigate, and not only companies but also governments and regulators. How should they really think about the potential scenarios and how do you respond to them? And so that's what our work focuses on, helping pretty much everybody in the value chain. So over the years, you get a chance to work with all the major players, but more importantly, all the startups that that do really phenomenal work in the ecosystem, as well as and the policymakers who shape the ecosystem. And so we get a true 360 view of the ecosystem as to what's
Mm.
happening, what the issues are, and that helps us understand where the trajectory is, what's the line of sight to a lot of the trends, and inform the C-suite, especially as to what the big decisions they need to make over the coming 2 to 5 years, and how should they organize themselves, the companies, their product lines, and so on and so forth, to address those opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, so interesting. And you're in Seattle, I believe. Is Seattle the new ground zero worldwide, the new hub for wireless technology innovation? It's kind of come a long way from a sleepy city 20 years ago.
Well, so I mean, I don't know if you know, Seattle was the birthplace for true wireless expansion in the US. Clearly in the 1984 when it was commercialized, but it wasn't until Macau Cellular
Mhm.
put the disparate networks together to form a nationwide network is when not Seattle, but the wireless industry really took off. And then of course it got bought by AT&T, and rest is history. And so Seattle has that strong heritage of wireless, putting the wireless systems
Mm.
together, and now combined with obviously the cloud players, Amazon being the first one, and then followed by Microsoft, and then Google, Facebook, all came for engineering talent, and now it's obviously the hub for AI. And so Seattle has, from the old days of just Boeing as the major employer, it now has pretty much everybody who is involved in tech in one shape or another.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. Well, fast forward to the present day. We've seen so much change and disruption in the mobile and telecom industry over the past few years. Through the pandemic, everything's been upside down. What trends have you been sort of spotting or looking at closely over the past couple 3 years in your personal
Yeah,
professional work?
so our work revolves around something I call synchronous S curves. People are very familiar with
Mhm.
S curves, something that goes up very fast after the initial delay, and then rapidly goes on to plateau, and then the next curve starts, and so on and so forth. But what we have been observing for the last two cycles is that there's this notion of synchronous S curves where multiple technologies grow at the same time, and they influence each other in a way that accelerates these curves. And so we clearly saw that with internet and PC. But really got to see the power of synchronous S curves in the last cycle with LTE coming in with smartphones and the cloud, and that just changed the landscape of how technology is developed and deployed around the world at the same time. And now we're seeing the same thing with AI, 5G, edge computing, robotics, blockchain, quantum, and so on and so forth. And so they are influencing the tech world in general in their own ways, but they're really influencing each other in profound ways. And that's what's exciting. And so the intersection of the curves is what we really focus on. How AI is going to accelerate edge, or edge is going to accelerate 5G, or 5G is going to accelerate robotics, and so on and so forth. I think that's where disruption really takes place, and new growth areas emerge.
New growth areas, indeed. Of course, it's AI everywhere all at once. It's
Yeah,
we're truly in the hype cycle. My new Samsung Galaxy Note, not Note, but Galaxy Ultra arrives
yeah,
this week, and
yeah.
all the buzz is about AI functionality. But what's the real role beyond the buzz, the hype of AI in data networks, in transforming the industry? Beyond the marketing buzz.
Yeah. So AI, as you know, has been around for a really long time. It has been really
Mm,
around a long time in the wireless industry. In fact, my first job as an engineer was I was exposed to neural networks, which was the incarnation of what is today known as AI. And we used AI in detecting fraud in the 1G days, analog days. The system was AMPS at that time. And so we used the training methods to train the data set to detect fraud. That the cloning fraud was rampant at that time in the 1G days. And subsequently, people have used AI techniques to really train a large data set and use that to infer XYZ, whatever the problem might be. Fast forward to now, clearly Gen AI is something brand new. It's something that has emerged as just this phenomenal technology that can be applied to different problem sets. But AI in general has been growing pretty steadily in the ecosystem. And so I'm more interested in, clearly you can apply Gen AI to things like customer service, training your own
mm,
employees, even network network issues that you have to debug. Um, you can start placing probably not so experienced network engineers on much
mm.
harder problems. And because of this Gen AI tool, you can start to uh, get results much faster. Instead of Excel spreadsheets that go for gigabytes, you can start to query the data and get pictures and get to the root cause analysis fairly quickly. But then there's a whole field of applied AI that has been maturing over time and is now becoming part of the 3GPP or the standards process. Uh, and that's where I think more impact, from a pure wireless industry point of view, more impact we're going to see. Because that really helps with a number of things. One is just the operation, how you operate your really complex networks, reduce the cost of operations. You can do a lot of network steering. And now we get into the area of native AI with 5G Advanced, as well as kind of the 6G standardization work that is just starting. And so I think AI and wireless industry have been closely linked for at least 3 decades that I've been in. But people have been thinking about solving really complex problems through a means of using machines in general, right? Like automation is inherent in human nature. Like we have been
Mm.
trying to automate things for thousands of years. And this is just the continuum. Gen AI just gives us, like, supercharges some of the solutions that we have been thinking about in a much powerful way. But AI as a concept across various data sets, I think opens up all sorts of new possibilities. Like start to do, you can start to run your radio network on a compute platform, which
Mm.
was unimaginable before. You can place applications next to your RAN and start sharing data between them that was unimaginable before. And so the compute process that's becoming available, complemented with Gen AI and other things, really start to enable the ecosystem to do things that were very, very difficult to do in the past.
Well said. It's exciting times. We should call the MWC 24 the AI show. I think we have to rebrand it or rename it because there's going
Yeah,
to
I
be a
mean, there
lot of
will be
buzz
a
there.
lot of AI stuff there for sure. Yes.
Let's talk about 5G. There's a lot of misconceptions about 5G technology,
Hmm.
criticisms of its being overhyped, and we've seen even headwinds on 5G deployment with a number of the network vendors globally. What's the state of play at the moment, in your opinion, and how do you see 5G and standalone 5G advancing and unfolding over the next year or two?
Yeah. I mean, 5G, like any other technology story over a long period of time, reminds me of the elephant and the blind man. And so, depending on which part you touch, you might get a different viewpoint on 5G. And so, if you are looking for a scaled, like all the next set of surgeries to take place over 5G, if that was your metric, then clearly why 5G has failed. If your metric was that a lot of the VR traffic will go over 5G, then on that metric it has failed. But if you are kind of more, if you have been in the industry for a long time, you know that these things take time. And so I'll just give you a few metrics that indicates 5G is actually progressing just fine. It's just the way you look at it can distort your view. And you really have to look at 5G holistically, um, uh, and also look at worldwide to get a true picture. Because if you look at 5G in Europe, it looks like, oh, 5G is a disaster. If you look at 5G in China, like, oh, this is the best thing that has come in a long time. So, good things are, so if we just look at the US market, 5G has clearly reversed the revenue trend that the operators were experiencing before. It was going down. 5G comes along, it starts to change. And some of the change in trajectory can be clearly attributed to 5G. People are paying more. They're willing to pay more to have these services available to them, faster bandwidths, more data capacity available to them in large numbers, to the point that the net shift in revenues is similar or greater than what the shift we saw from 3G to 4G in the first 4 or 5 years. Right. And so if the revenue is the metric, then 5G is just doing fine in the US. Now, there are some countries where they have deployed 5G, but there's not a corresponding ARPU uplift. And so that's a bit challenging for them. And so you say, well, maybe if you just look at that, then it could be 5G is not doing so well. Then if you look at China, China is a whole new story because they have truly executed on their enterprise strategy, and doing absolutely just killing it on enterprise 5G. And so if you look at that, you'll say, oh, 5G is like hit the ball out of the ballpark technology. And so holistically, we clearly know that 5G number of subs on 5G is 3x, 4x faster than LTE. On the consumer side, there's not a whole lot to write home about except for fixed wireless. But that's not because 5G failed in some way. It's because some of the expectations around, say, VR headsets, they have not come to. VR technology has not. It's taking more time than expected. And what we expected in um, 2017, 2015, when these things were getting formulated. And so I think it's just a matter of perspective. How do you have to really look at 5G from all dimensions to really appreciate what 5G has bring. So we are just at the midpoint. Now people are starting to get into 5G advanced discussions. And so the second half, for countries who have already deployed 5G, they're doing well looking into 5G advanced. we haven't even talked about India. India is just another fascinating 5G
Mm,
story because they went SA, Geo went SA, or standalone directly, and they are seeing just tremendous uptick, the fastest deployment in the world. The consumption, data consumption is higher than any of the Western countries, and they are going to go after a lot of the enterprise opportunities in a very short amount of time. And so I think 5G is serving the purpose that it was intended to. Having said that, there clearly was a lot of hype. I mean, it was, and that's some of the hype is similar to what we are seeing with AI today. If you need some kind of,
mm.
hype to to market it. But then we also need to be sanguine enough to really look at, okay, what's the meat? How do you connect the dots? What's the first million going to come from? Where the first billion is going to come from, and so on and so forth. And so you just have to be, so as executives or as board members, you have to really focus on uh, to the meat of of the thesis rather than just getting swept away by what's in the press or what's vendors might be telling you. So you really have to look at, okay, how am I going to use 5G for the requirements or the issues that I have in my operations, whether it's hospital, ports, manufacturing, logistics, and so on and so forth. So 5G is another tool for automation, and it provides the connectivity fabric. But then you have to do other things on top of it using AI or edge computing or application development and so on and so forth. But it really enables the automation in the enterprise if you just look at the enterprise side. And on the consumer side, I think clearly the bandwidths are there and latencies are available, but it's really the consistency that matters. Like you want a
Mm.
consistent experience of 50 megabits per second, no matter where you are, and that has clearly improved from the LTE days. And you couldn't have done that with LTE because you do need that fatter pipe to be able to provide that consistency across multiple users at the busiest time in the day.
Yeah, well said. Well, for me, as a content creator and mobile professional, kind of
Yeah.
professional consumer, it's been transformational in my work. So I've been very delighted with 5G. Changing gears, another topic that
Hmm.
gets a lot of attention is sustainability in telecom.
Yeah.
In the early days, and we saw greenwashing and
Yes.
around sustainability. But in telecom, it seems real. There seems to be a real, particularly in Europe, drive to reduce carbon footprints and data center footprints and water consumption and recyclability. And this is all happening right now. What say you?
That's true, and you're right that there was a lot of greenwashing. There still is. There are goals that are, we are being completely honest about how should we go about sustainability goals and how we're going to meet them. But I think the crisis in Europe is with the war that changed the perspective. I think that's
Mm,
when energy bills doubled and tripled.
mm,
That made operators go hunting for solutions, and clearly there are solutions, especially if you use AI to manage the network in a way that only serves when it's needed and shuts down when it's not. I think if you can automate that process, that can yield 20 to 40% energy savings, if not more. And so that is happening, and that will lead to sustainability. And I think industry should kind of embed those goals in their 5G advanced and 6G specifications as well, because we have done a really good job on a per bit basis, but on a net
mm.
basis, 5G does consume more power than what 4G did. And so we really have to be conscious about, as we plan 6G, that we really need to focus on the net power consumption and not just the per bit consumption.
Totally. And what are your thoughts on 6G in this very early phase? Are you optimistic, or is it really a long-term 10-year kind of horizon here?
So 10 years, I mean, that's something that has been happening for the last 4 or 5 decades. So 6G is just the right time to start the conversation.
Mm,
However, I feel like some things have changed in the ecosystem. It used to be, until 4G, it used to be a fairly clear line of sight to revenues for the ecosystem. You just get more consumers latched onto data, and you can see the curve for revenues growing up. I think things have changed. There's a lot more pressure on operator financials these days. And so I do not think that we can go through another rip and replace and upgrade cycle with the operators. Operators just don't have the free cash flow and the revenue stream to do that. So there are two things that come to mind. One is the OpEx has to get fixed. OpEx problem has not been addressed by the industry. And on 6G side, it has to be a very software-centric and a compute-centric cycle. It cannot be, oh, just buy another, spend $50 billion on spectrum, put another 20 billion in infrastructure, and you will have customers. I think that time has passed, and so we have to rethink how we do the upgrades. And if it's a more software-centric cycle to get to the features that enterprises need or consumers need, I think we'll be much more successful with 6G. But if it's a traditional cycle, I have my doubts at this early stage whether that can succeed.
It'll be interesting to watch. What's your take on the industry in terms of collaboration? I mean, traditionally, mobile has been such a global industry, 3GPP and GSMA and one standard, very unified collaboration. Now we're seeing, geopolitics enter, and
Yeah.
the Great Divide with the West and China and India and competition. Do you think we can continue this era of collaboration that we've had for decades, or are we going to break into silos? China, the U.S. and the Five Eyes, and maybe India, or are
Yeah.
what's your take on the future of
So I think
telecom competition?
everybody, yeah. So mobile is one technology that has benefited from collaboration like nothing else. I mean, it's the most widely deployed technology in the world, and that's because of the work that's done at 3GPP. And so your phone can work anywhere, your data can be delivered to you anywhere. And so with 6G, there is a fear that we might get into fragmentation. We might have a Chinese version, Indian version, Western version. Having said that, I think amongst the players, infrastructure players who are critical for this, and the chip players, there is a sense that we need to continue. Like there are benefits to collaborate, because scale is important for the ecosystem. If the solution is too pricey or too niche, just for China, just for India, just for US, it's just not going to scale, going to be too price. And we have seen that. China tried that with TDS CDMA. We are going down the path of WiMAX. That's why LTE actually accelerated. And so it serves no one. It's like and the fragmentation. So in the end customer suffers if the prices and the cost of deployment is high. So there is clear alignment on that amongst all the players that I've talked to. But geopolitics has a funny way of entering the standardization process. And so it's too early to say. Everybody realizes that you can only dominate through economic means. You can dominate through if you have domination in technology. And so there is that realization in China and India, and they'll try to see what they can do on the IP front, on creating maybe specific versions of it for local deployment. And so we don't know how that's going to play out. Everybody is just figuring out how to position. And in the end, I think everybody will come to the conclusion that it's better to have the underlying framework, underlying fabric of connectivity common amongst players around the world. And then what you do on top is where you can differentiate. You don't have to really have 5 different versions of 6G to take advantage of what happens on the application side. You can differentiate on how you use AI. You can differentiate on how you use AI for specific industry verticals, how you can automate end-to-end, and so on and so forth. But on the basic connectivity layer, I think there should be standardization.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed on that. What are you excited about for Mobile World Congress? You've been going for a long time, maybe
Yeah,
before it was in Barcelona, it was in where Nice and Cannes. You were probably there as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Any tips or tricks for the newbies going to Mobile World Congress? I'd say bring good shoes, not dress shoes.
Yeah,
That's probably a good one. What
hydrate,
else?
good shoes, and just have a good. I mean, a lot of the insights are gathered from, um, just running into people, or
Mm,
do I spend a lot of time on the show floor, because that's where I learn a lot. I
mm.
learn a lot from my friends and people I just run into, haven't seen in a long time. Obviously, there will be standard sessions, and it's good to go to a few of them, especially the keynotes, to see what at a high level industry execs are saying. But spend a fair amount of time on the show floor, because that's where you're going to learn from the smaller players as to what's coming.
Fantastic. Any early insights or predictions you care to share? I know there'll be a lot of breaking news, which you might even be a part of. But what do you have your eye on in advance of the show?
So there are a few things I think that'll be interesting to watch. One is, I think, the big announcement that AT&T made with the Ericsson Open RAN. It'll
Mm,
be interesting to see what the conversations are now with respect to Open RAN, and how other operators react to it, and potentially embrace it. So that'll be one to watch. Every operator, large operator, has been tinkering around with AI, and so it'll be good to see what the early opinion is about AI, and what's needed to really operationalize it. Whether it's cleaning up the data, hiring the right talent, picking the right partners, whatever it is. And so I think the playbook is starting to develop as to what's needed to get AI implemented in an organization across multiple dimensions. And so I'm interested in looking at that. Um, I think some of the early 6G features or work groups are going to get crystallized as to what should we really be focused on for 6G. What should we study, what should we research, where the breakthroughs are needed, and so on and so forth. So I hope to see some of the discussions there. And finally, I think the enterprise 5G is supposed to be the enterprise cycle, and so I want to see how enterprises are thinking about 5G, like from a not
mm.
POC point of view, but how have they implemented it, and what are they finding, and what are still the problems in execution, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the areas that I'm interested in. Uh,
Well, it's going to be a
yeah,
fantastic week. So much to learn, so many insights, and I hope we can briefly connect and get your
sure,
perspectives on the show floor.
sure.
And thanks for watching, everyone. Reach out to Chetan and follow him on LinkedIn and Twitter. You always have amazing insights and content and research that you put out, which is always fun to read. And thanks everyone for watching. If you're be at MWC, ping us on Twitter. Yes, I still call it Twitter, and we'll see you there.
All
Thanks so
right,
much.
thanks, Evan.
Take care.